comment ça va? Let's try that again. Comment ça va? Much better. That's about the extent of my French, but you will see a little bit of French in this presentation because I've tried to sprinkle it in, so at least you'll absorb that much. I have an apology to make as well as a warning to give. The apology is that I don't speak French as a rule, so I will have limited French with you, but I will try to speak clearly and articulately so that you will be able to grasp a lot of information. And that brings us, first of all, to the title of this presentation, which is Anticipate, and it's anticipating the change and the disruption and the opportunity that is before us with digital. So the warning comes because in the next hour, I'm going to be going through somewhere in the order of 70 slides. I think it's 72 to be exact, somewhere in the order of 193 data sources, and last count, 398 builds. So there's going to be a lot of information, and so I suggest that you fasten your seatbelts, that you don't even attempt to take notes of this presentation because I'm going to be going way too fast for that. But if you would like a copy of the presentation later, I will be happy to give it to you. Simply give me your business card and we'll make sure that you get a link to it. And if you're not ready for a lot of data, it might be time to scoot out for another cup of coffee. And if you're really afraid of data, like too many numbers freaks you out, then I suggest you switch to another beverage, or perhaps have one later with me at the bar after the day's activities. So with that, let's look at the agenda today. What are we going to cover? We're going to anticipate three things, trois choses. First of all, where is the consumer going? We'll look at this on a global basis, but then also take a deep dive into Western Europe and what's happening specifically here in France. We'll then look at where the media spending is flowing, and then finally, what do you need to do to succeed? Some kind of tips or best practices that you can follow. So let's start with the world of the consumer, and it's a very fragmented media world, as we all know. There are so many different devices and ways of connecting to the internet, whether it's through our phone, through our smartwatch, and increasingly through things like our car or our fridge. The consumer, though, of course, is everywhere, but he or she remains elusive to most marketers because they can't quite connect the dots. They have a very fuzzy image of where that consumer is and what their intentions might be. And so that we're going to talk a lot about how do we connect those dots and what's required. So with that, let's take a look. It's going a little slow here, so I'll speed it up. There we go. Let's take a look at the audience fragmentation picture. These are statistics for France. eMarketer's forecast team works on numbers for a number of different countries, including France. And as you can see, mobile users, about 77% of the population. Tablet users, about 38% of the population. Smartphone, are just under 50%. And remember, these are percent of the entire population figures. They're not percent of internet users. And then you have social media users, which we estimate is 41% of the entire population. But then within social media users, we of course have various platforms that consumers can choose from, and that includes Facebook, which is the 800-pound gorilla at 35% of the population. Then you've got Twitter at about 5%, Pinterest at 3%. We don't have any numbers for Snapchat because every time we try to look at the numbers, they disappear. I don't know. They said you wouldn't get that, but I'm so glad. Is anybody use Snapchat here? Okay, the few people who laughed. Good. Okay, just checking. So let's move along and talk about another form of fragmentation, which is fragmentation of attention and our time. So let's take a look at multitasking. Here are some statistics that we compiled for the French market, and what you can see is that about 44% of French internet users regularly go online while they are watching television. That's supported by, as you can see, about 3 different data sources here, all slightly different definitions and methodologies that they employ, but they're nicely centered around 44%. Let's look at that a little bit more deeply in our simultaneous media usage report. What you see is that France in terms of its proclivity, or French people in terms of their proclivity to multitask while watching television, is pretty much on par with the US at 43%, but behind the UK, they spend a lot of time on a second screen in the UK at 63% while watching television. What's also interesting to note is that if you look at the devices that they're on while they're watching television, 63% said computer and 43% said smartphones. So there's, again, a high degree of multitasking going on. Let's take a look at the global mobile picture. All the world is going mobile, as we know. 4.4 billion people on this planet, or 61% of all of us on the planet. That includes children. I mean, it's a really broad number. 61%. 1.84 billion are on smartphones, which essentially is, of course, a computer in your pocket. That is 26% of the total world's population, and it equates to 42% of mobile users on a smartphone. That is the global average. If we compare countries, you see that the US and UK are ahead there at about 74% of mobile users on a smartphone. France is right along with Germany, Spain, and Italy at around 55, 60%. What's also interesting is, well, we see France growing to about 73%, or pretty much where the US and UK are by the year 2017. Next is that we look at tablet penetration. Once again, the UK and the US are ahead of the game. Spain, France, Germany at about 50%. And once again, we see growth with France to 57% by the year 2017. And it's also of note, we reach a milestone this year of 1 billion people on the planet with a tablet device. So, let's talk about speed. There's a big change coming in terms of the speed of mobile phones around the world. These are global figures from Cisco. In 2014, about 62% of all mobile phone users are on 2G, with only 38% on 3 or 4G. But by the year 2019, the picture changes dramatically. Sometimes my clicker doesn't work so well. And you see that almost 80% by the year 2019 will be on 3G or 4G. That's the way the world is going. Next is 1/3. Mobile is 1/3 of global traffic. It is 1/3 of global search inquiries. And it is 1/3 of global video views. That is according to Cisco, StatCounter, Marinsoft, a number of different sources that essentially support that. And if we look at the video portion, it's interesting to note that at this point, mobile video is half of mobile data worldwide. Half of the data is mobile, half the data is video on our mobile devices, and it's even higher in France at 55%. And millennials, of course, are driving a lot of that mobile video usage. Let's take a closer look. This is looking at average number of digital video views per digital video viewer in France. And what you see is there's a peak at the 15 to 24-year-old and also quite a bit high at 25 to 34. So millennials, young people under 34, are much more likely to engage in online mobile video and to watch them more frequently, which shouldn't be a big surprise. Now we're going to switch gears for a second, and we're going to look at time spent. And in this particular case, we're going to look at the UK, and then we'll take a look at the US, and then France. eMarketer's forecast team has looked at some 70 to 80 different sources, compiling numbers from all of these research companies, looking at different platforms and so on. And what we've come to the conclusion is, after poring over the data for months, is that the television still reigns supreme in the UK in terms of time spent. And by the way, when we look at time spent, we include double counting. Because if I'm in front of a television screen while I'm on the smartphone, it's impossible to tell how much time is devoted to each device, so we simply double count that. What that means is that television is at 3 hours and 12 minutes, or 34% of all media time. If you add all the digital devices up, smartphones, laptops, PCs, tablets, etc., it's actually higher than television at 48%. But then when you break that apart with the digital, you find that desktop and laptop are 2 hours and 13 minutes, and that's exceeded by mobile, which is now 2 hours and 26 minutes. And what that means then is that essentially mobile is the number 2 device in the UK in terms of time spent. That's the UK. And when I say that our researchers and forecasting team look at a lot of data, I am talking about hundreds and hundreds of spreadsheets that would make your eyes glaze over. And if you have any doubt, you know, come see me later and I will show you some of those spreadsheets. If we look at another market, the US, this already happened last year, is that mobile became the number 2 medium in terms of time spent. Now let's take a look at France. Our forecasting team has not yet looked at the French market because we haven't seen enough data yet. So we're going to borrow some data from Ipsos Mori. And what it shows is that once again, television is number 1, 38% of media time. If you add up all the digital devices, it's at 43%. And they estimate that if you look at the breakdown within digital, is that mobile is number 3 at 1 hour and 30 minutes. So eventually, though, what we will see is that mobile becomes the number 2 medium right behind television. So now let's look at the mobile social arena. According to our numbers, 1/4 of the entire French population uses Facebook on a mobile phone. And if we look at this data from SNCD, it looks at devices used to access social media according to social media users in France. And it's looking at, in the red, 2013 going to 2014. And as you can see, there's a significant increase in accessing social media on both smartphones and tablets. And we see that across markets all over the place, and it's particularly predominant among millennials. They drive so much of the change that we see. We've also found that about a little over 1/3 of French mobile users who are active on social sites said they have become customers because of the social networks presence. So if we move ahead to purchasing, what we find is that about half of smartphone owners purchase on their mobile phones. How many people in the audience have purchased on a mobile phone before? That's 43.8%. Make a note of that. That's another data point. Let's take a look at some country comparisons. And this is according to Mintel. And as you can see, France is a little on the lower side. You guys, I think it was 38 something. So you guys are a little higher than the 28% we estimate. Perhaps you are not representative of the entire French population for whatever reason. Perhaps it's because we're at a digital conference. So smartphone owners have essentially become, or smartphones have become the remote controls for our lives. And certainly I feel this. I almost needed an Uber car to get here because we ended up traipsing through the beach trying to find this location. So maybe I should have used an Uber car. I know that many people use their smartphones to control the security systems at their home. And I am known with my teenagers in the car to play music through my smartphone. And then we always have battles of who gets to pick the music. And then this is actually a shot of my actual living room where we can control the temperature of the living room. And of course, I can watch video on that on the small screen, and then I can play that out on the bigger screen. So that brings us to video disruption. It's no longer that we're just watching cat videos, you know, on YouTube. There's so many more sophisticated things happening on video. I'm sure many of you have heard of the US show. Let me go over here and see if I can advance this. Many of you have heard of the US show House of Cards by Netflix. And I haven't seen it yet, but I heard that Versailles is excellent. I'm just curious, how many people have seen that show? Okay, a few of you. All right. I will be watching it shortly. In France, 56% of households have what is called a connected or a smart TV. We see the same trends in other countries. 63% of internet users in France say they watch TV programs digitally, and 48% watch movies. We see those numbers pretty steady, and in fact, they're going to be going up pretty rapidly over the next few years. What's interesting, though, is that if you go into my home and you see that there's something happening on the TV screen, the big TV screen that we have in our basement, I have no idea through which device that programming is coming, because we have an Xbox, we're subscribers to Netflix, Amazon Video, we have an Apple TV, we even have a Roku device, and so I really don't even know through which medium I'm watching this, even though it's happening on a TV screen. And I will tell you this, though, there are no ads because we are streaming shows or content over the internet, and we are not subject to ads. And this, we are already starting to see the cracks in the system in the US, where the whole $70 billion TV market seems to be beginning to crack. There's an unbundling of the whole cable empire, and so we no longer necessarily have to spend what amounts to the average American spending $90 on a cable bill for hundreds of channels that you never watch. We're rebundling those packages at smaller rates, so you only pay for what you want to watch. So that's going to happen all across the world. As we conclude on the consumer, we know that it's only going to get more and more fragmented as we have more and more devices, from our cars to our fridges, connecting to the internet. And many of you may already be thinking about getting a smartphone. an iWatch. I have been trying to convince my wife for years, or not for years, for months, I guess, because I've been anticipating it for so many years now, that I need to get this for business purposes. And in fact, what I really would like is the $17,000 gold edition, but I think I'm going to have trouble with that. If you have any suggestions later at cocktail hour, please share them with me. IDC forecasts that there will be 6x growth in wearable device shipments worldwide over the next few years. Make no mistake, the opportunity with these smaller devices, it's not so much on the smaller screens. It's really about the data they collect as we walk around 24/7, and they are on us, with us, 24/7, 365 days a year. As Tim Cook of Apple said, it's not with you, it's on you. So we now come to our second part of this presentation, which is to look at where the money is flowing. How many of you control digital budgets? Please raise your hand. Okay, that's a good 60% of you. So let's take a look at where the money is going. This is looking at global media spending, all media, television, radio, print, outdoor, indoor, digital. And what you see is that it's about a $578 billion business. We estimated it's growing at about 5.9%, okay? Mostly because of digital and mostly because of mobile. That's where the growth is, as we'll see in a second. That's our number at 5.9%. If we do what we like to do at eMarketer, which is look at comparative estimates, look at other sources and see what they say. As you can see, we're at 5.9%, and there's a sweet spot of many of the, like almost a dozen researchers, about 5 or 6 of them are right around the 5 to 6% range. What's also interesting to note, and we're guilty of this too, is the specificity with which they put out those numbers, 5.96% and so on. It reminds me of the famous mathematician John von Neumann, who said, there's no sense in being precise when you don't even know what you're talking about. So just a little humility there. In Europe, in Western Europe, there's only 2.2% growth in total media. And our latest estimate for France is about 0.5%, or essentially flat. So all media in France, from a growth perspective, is essentially flat. So let's take a look at the digital perspective. On a global basis, we see digital growing 17.8%. And let's unpack that. China is bringing up that average significantly, which is that market from a digital perspective is growing at 30% clip. The US is also pretty high, as well as the UK. France and Germany are behind at about 6% growth for digital, but that's still significantly higher than total media. Let's take another look. This is looking at digital ad spending as a percent of total media spending. In this case, in the world, is 30%. And if we look at it on a country-by-country basis, we find that Canada, China, and the United Kingdom are way ahead of the game in terms of their propensity to spend on digital. And we find the United States is pretty much right around the worldwide average at 31%. We like our television. And then what you see is France and Germany a little lower than the average. But make no mistake, over the next 2 or 3 years, we're going to see significant increase in the percentage of dollars going to digital properties. Let's take a look at where the digital money is coming from. This was a great quote that I saw recently from a gentleman at Group M. He said that print is the organ donor for digital, and I'll just translate it just to make sure that the point gets home, that so much of it is coming from newspapers and magazines, but eventually it will have to start coming from television as well as it gets bigger. Let's go back to our growth rates. These are, again, global figures. We see total media at 5.9%, digital at 17.8%. Our estimate is that on a global basis, mobile is growing at about 61%. If we make a comparison, we see that France and Germany are growing just about that rate at around 60%. But we have to look at the absolute numbers as well, which we'll do in a second. But first, this is some global data that we got, in this case from the Economist Intelligence Unit, looking at areas where their company is most likely to increase technology investment. And as you can see, right after social media is mobile marketing. So, very high on people's spending agendas. Also, if you're in B2B, this is also a worldwide study. This is from Salesforce Marketing Cloud. After content marketing and marketing automation, very high on the list are both mobile apps and location-based mobile tracking. We'll talk a little bit about that later in the program. Western European ad spending. This is kind of the big picture of Western European ad spending. Total spending across all media is $118 billion. Digital is about 30% of that, or $35 billion, and mobile is at $12 billion, or 34% of digital media. So 34% of digital media worldwide is going to mobile devices. That's smartphones and tablets. Let's take a look at a country-by-country comparison. As you can see, Western Europe is pretty much at that rate at 34%. Then we look higher on the screen. There it comes. Worldwide in UK, pretty much at 40%. And then if we look at the United States and China leading the charge, where in the United States, almost 50% of all digital ad spending is going to the mobile device. This is, again, this year. And then what we see in Italy, Germany, and France is that they're a little bit behind. But again, we expect to see quite a bit of catch-up. And in fact, that's what we're going to look at here, is if you look at France, we think that mobile ad spending as a percent of digital will grow from 22% this year to 58% by the year 2019. So rapid growth over the next few years. If you want to look at it on a dollar basis, as you can see, $714 million, growing 3x over the next few years. It will be up to you guys to actually make those numbers happen. Otherwise, we look really bad as a forecaster. Now let's look at some milestones in the mobile world of spending. Some very significant changes that are going to happen in 2016 next year. First of all, global mobile ad spend will top $100 billion. Mobile will equal 50% of total digital ad spending across the world in that year, and mobile ads will account for 1 out of every 6 total media dollars, or about 17%. And mobile will overtake desktop ad spending next year. Mobile will overtake desktop ad spending next year. So you're probably wondering, Jeff, is this a desktopocalypse? I mean, is this the what we call the end of days for our desktop-centric ad ecosystem? Well, not quite, because desktop advertising will not go the way of newspapers and magazines. It won't disappear entirely. But mobile will be 2/3 of the global digital ad spending pie in 2018, and that will relegate desktop to 34%. So a massive switchover in a very few short years, about 3-4 years' time. Where is all the mobile money coming from? According to the Interactive Advertising Bureau in Europe, the majority of that mobile money is coming from budgets from other media. A bigger question might be, where is all the mobile money going? Somebody is making revenues off of this mobile advertising, so let's take a look. No big surprise, it's the 2 big players in the market, Google and Facebook, which our forecasters estimate this year that those 2 alone, Facebook and Google, will control 51%, or over half, of global mobile advertising dollars. But it's not just about the money. It's also about the data they are collecting, and that is probably the bigger story here. So, as we're going to speak about data, we have to, of course, talk about programmatic. Let's take a look at our US forecast just to get a sense, because the US is leading the world in terms of advancing into programmatic buying. These are our estimates that we came up with in October of last year. We estimate that the US programmatic ad market is about $10 billion. We estimate that it will double to $20 billion by 2016, faster than anything else in terms of growth. $15 billion this year, and that is a majority, or 55% of all digital ad spending is going through programmatic channels. Again, that's in the US. Let's take a comparison. US, 55% of digital ad spend goes through programmatic. The guess by our forecasters right now, this is not an official number, is 51%. Our forecasters have not made an estimate yet for France, but I'm going to share you my personal secret number, which is around 30%. Please do not tweet this or post this on Facebook, because I will get in big trouble with my forecasting team. Okay, I know you're doing it already, so never mind. Mobile. What's happening with mobile and programmatic? If we go back to the US numbers and we look at that $15 billion that's spent programmatically this year, we did a breakdown of that, and we found that a majority, or 56%, of programmatic display ad dollars are going to mobile, over 50%, and an 88% growth rate. And if you look at it on a worldwide basis, according to Turn, mobile is growing 132% in terms of programmatic. So rapid growth. It's important to realize that programmatic is not just about efficiencies, marketers looking to save money, although that is the number 3 answer in this global survey looking at the benefits of programmatic advertising. Actually, sorry, this is a US survey, but it's applicable to other markets. But even more important than decreased costs, according to these survey respondents, was real-time optimization and better targeting, getting to the right consumer at the right time. As my friend Rob Norman of Group M said, the ability to react in real time to market circumstances is much easier to do in a programmatic automated world. Also, taking a cue from Tamara of Digitas, who says it allows us to make sure we can have a one-to-one conversation at mass scale, because we're dynamic in our creative as well as in our targeting choices. So again, it's not just about saving money, it's about reaching the right consumer and doing it at scale. A quick word on social media ad spending. We saw that 41% of internet users, of the entire population of France is going to social media. If we look at the growth in social media spending, as you can see, France seems to be ahead of the world, and Western Europe and US in terms of growth. That's not absolute numbers. Caveat is that the French number here, the 36%, isn't coming from eMarketer. It's coming from Social Intel 360. We're eventually going to get forecasts for France. But what I can tell you is that our researchers have looked at social media ad spending per internet user as a kind of a relative comparison between countries. And we see that the US leads at $50 per internet user. The UK is next at 48. Western Europe average is about 25. And our latest estimate is that, again, using Social Intel's figure, is that France is a little under that at $20. But again, we expect to see rapid growth in that. That brings us, hopefully, to the next one. There we are. Spending is also shifting to content marketing. This was a study done by eConsultancy and Oracle Marketing Cloud. It was a global survey, and what they found is that 73% of global marketers plan to increase their spending this year on content marketing. And in fact, it was the #1 spending priority. This is looking at the big challenges with content marketing, and there are 2 different sources here. One is global, and the other is looking at the US and the UK. But the #1 response from both of the surveys was interesting. The reason why we're having trouble with content marketing is a lack of resources and budget to deliver high-quality content efficiently. So that's why we're going to see increased spending, because we have to get the resources to get that content out there. And we'll see why that's important in a second. Now we've come to the third part of this presentation, which is anticipating what it will take to succeed in this very digital and fragmented world. So we do interviews as well, and we did this interview with Sheldon Monteiro of Sapient Nitro, who said what clients are trying to do is to ensure that across their marketing needs, the customer journey is not fragmented. We're trying to stitch together all of that activity to understand the customer journey. That's the challenge that we all face. From the consumer's perspective, it doesn't look so good. This is an IBM study that was just done in concert with eConsultancy, and it said that 4 out of 5 consumers say that brands don't behave as if they know them. In fact, only 21% said that communications from the average company are usually relevant. We need to do better than that. And we'll take a look at what's entailed there. Marketers are struggling to manage the volume of data that is coming from these video streams, social streams, and mobile streams. It is a really hard task, but they are absolutely committed to the task. According to Accenture, as a global study, 59% of global marketers say that data measurement is extremely important. That was supported by another independent survey, this one from Oracle Marketing Cloud and eConsultancy, that 2/3 of marketers say that integrating marketing activities across all the channels is a main goal. In both cases, these were the highest response rates. So let's take a look at the big picture. If we look at it, there's a massive gap. Because as we just saw, 59 to 67% of global marketers say that integration of all those channels is important. But if we look at the actual picture, according to eConsultancy, only 5% of global marketers say they have seamlessly integrated their marketing channels. And we have a number of other sources, some looking at the global market, some looking at US, some looking at Western Europe, that basically support somewhere in the range of only 5 to 10% have actually figured this out and are actually integrating. So complex attribution and measurement models remain a work in progress. This is based on a number of different studies that we've looked at. Between 52 and 58% of marketers are using what's called last touch or first touch metrics. In other words, you could have been exposed to 5 years of television, radio, banner ads, digital video, mobile, hundreds and hundreds of display ads, search results, etc. But if you do a click and you end up, on a search and you end up buying, that search click gets all of the credit for all of that brand activity that happened in that consumer's head. That makes no sense to me. But 21 to 34% of marketers are saying that they're using some form of multi-channel attribution approaches. These are more complex, sophisticated systems that look at attributing weight to various channels along the way. What it means, though, is that those who aren't even doing the first touch or last touch or the more complex methods are essentially flying blind. They have no idea what their marketing is doing for them, and obviously that's not going to last for very long. The studies also support the fact that mobile appears to be the least integrated. Let's take a look at that. In fact, let's take a look at the whole picture. Why can we not put all of this stuff together? Why can we not connect the dots with all of these devices, mobile, digital, and then offline as well? There are 2 reasons. It's not just about the data, it's also about the organizations themselves, the people, okay? This is an actual chart that was written by one of our clients, who shall remain nameless, in Canada. He actually sketched this out for us, showing how we were trying to go enterprise with them and to get all of their employees to get access to eMarketer's data. And what I wanted to share with you is this. See that little drawing there? That is the brick wall. That is the wall that these 2 divisions don't want to talk to each other. I don't want to hear what they're doing. I don't want to pool our budgets or do anything. I don't want to put our data together with them. We're like a separate company, all right? That is what's happening in companies all over the world. And I remember when I was 13 years old, I lived in England by a canal, and we had those walls. The only way we could get over them to mess around in the canal was that if we helped each other up, right? And that's what we need to do. We need to break down those silos so that organizations are sharing information with each other and sharing the data. The other thing, of course, is that we've got all of the data in silos. There's, the SEM, there's the email silo, there's the web analytics, social media, and then mobile. And then within mobile, you've got people who are looking at tablet data, and then you have people who are looking at smartphone data, and pretty soon they'll be looking at watch data, and then there'll be the, oh, I'm in charge of the fridge data. That's kind of crazy, but that's the way it is. Back to that gap. Don't forget it, and don't forget this, because there's going to be a change very soon. We saw that the numbers are pretty scary, but you can anticipate that that gap will be closed and closed. Don't you love PowerPoint? When you, I spend way too much time on this at night. My wife will tell you. This is 3 independent studies. And they, oops, sorry, we'll go back there. There's 3 independent studies, and this is interesting at looking at the convergence. We like to see the convergence. All 3 studies say that upwards of 64% of marketers say that they are planning to increase their data-related marketing budgets in 2015. They're going to put significant money behind mastering and managing all of this data that's under their control. If you look at this chart, this is from, again, from eConsultancy, looking at spending will be particularly focused on measurement and attribution. And in fact, that was the #1 response. Marketing attribution systems. Everybody is looking to spend more on that. According to one of our recent reports on cross-platform attribution, we found that cross-screen multi-touch attribution will become a reality for a large number of mostly multinational companies and brands over the next 12 to 18 months. This is not years, this is the next 12 to 18 months. So if you want to be a part of the leaders, you have to fall in line with them. We also did a report on cross-platform attribution, and these are 2 more things that you need to know. You probably heard that the cookie is still around, but it's being used less and less, partly because of mobile, because it works to some extent on Androids, but it doesn't work on Androids in the app, and it doesn't work on iOS. And pretty soon, with all the other devices that we have, cookies just won't cut it. Eventually, the cookie is already crumbling, but eventually the cookie will go completely away. It will be replaced either by some kind of universal code that we can put together, but it will more likely be a hodgepodge or a mishmash, a combination of probabilistic and deterministic models that anticipate, use that word again, where the consumer is going and what they're responding to. It's very complex, and that's why we need to spend so much money on it. Another kind of cue to think about is that location has become the cookie of the mobile world. Let's take a deeper look at that. Yes, vous êtes ici, and I'm not sure why you're here versus on the beach. I can't believe these statistics are that interesting. I don't know about you, but I would probably be on the beach right now. But mobile can add location to your marketing mix, and that is critically important. We've seen study after study that show that location-specific ads consistently work better than other ads that don't have location because they add that important context. Whereas, as we like to say, mobile is the connective tissue that links all of the other channels. You can even link to an outdoor billboard. You can link to television. And it also links to the consumer's intent at a given moment, place, and time. If we look at some of the other data that we have, we draw some insights that say that not every place is a good place, and not every time is a good time. Not every place is a good place, and not every time is a good time. The evolution of real-time marketing, we've done a number of reports on real-time marketing, which is a real challenge for marketers. And Debbie Williamson, our real-time analyst, said, it's not so much about real-time marketing, like you have to be there every second of every day for every consumer, you know, all waking hours. It's more about right-time marketing. It's more about using the data to figure out when is the best time or the best opportunity to reach somebody with a particular message. And it really comes down to using the data to what? Understand the customer's journey. That's what it's all about. Final thoughts, and I know you're wondering, how many more slides can you go through in 55 minutes? So let's take a look at this. If you take nothing else away from this presentation, it's this, that smart use of data across devices, platforms, across mobile, video, digital, is the only way to keep up with rising consumer expectations. and particularly with the younger generations, with millennials. They expect you to be able to follow them from device to device, to know who they are at any given point in time, because if you're not, then you look foolish and you're irrelevant, and they will go to competitors who do understand them. All right? So that's kind of an opportunity as well as a threat. But I'm also here to tell you that data won't get you the whole way. In fact, data only gets you halfway there. If you think about it, all of the data that we look at is looking backwards. It's like looking in the rear view mirror to understand what happened. What did my data analytics tell me what happened or didn't happen? But if you try driving a car only looking at the rear view mirror, well, we all know what that looks like, right? That's why we have to look ahead, and we have to still focus on connecting. Connecting on a human level with consumers. Not just about data, it's also about that human connection. Let's take a look at that more closely and make this as clear as I can. It's not just about the right place, which we can do with the mobile phone, or the right time, which we can also do with the mobile phone. It's also critically about adding value. It's the messaging itself. Are you actually saying something of importance or relevance to the consumer at that time? What I mean by that, if we dissect that, it could be a whole bunch of things. It could be entertainment. It could be something that's helpful. It could be a utility. It could be an app that helps me get on with my day. It could be something fun, solving a problem for a consumer. It's not about directly selling. It's more about connecting with that individual in a meaningful way so that they want to give you their time and they want to share your message with other people. Lego is a great example. They did an entire movie, right, that basically is a branding tool for Lego. Our whole family watched it, and my teenager, my 14-year-old, I have 3 teenagers. You can sympathize with me later. But the 14-year-old said, I don't want to watch the Lego movie. It's only for the 5-year-old. And we said, no, you should watch it. Within 14 minutes, he was glued to the movie screen and watched the whole thing, and he wanted to watch it again. That is powerful branding, and that is powerful content marketing. Another example, which I have a 5-year-old at home, and he likes to get into food and get it all over his face and so on. And so I really appreciate My Stain from Clorox that enables you, you know, if your child, in this case is my 5-year-old, gets ice cream on his face, and then it gets all over his shirt, you can call up, this is from Clorox, and you can say what kind of stain it is. In this case, let's say it's ice cream, creme glace. You type it in, it gives you a solution as how do you get that stain out. The key is that sometimes the solution is to use a Clorox product like Clorox bleach, but often it's something like club soda or some other household item that has nothing to do with Clorox. It's genuinely trying to help. That is the secret to breaking through, is that with mobile you want to ask yourself, how can I be useful at this given place or this given moment in time? It's really about shifting from push marketing, where you're pushing messages out, which television, of course, we've been doing that for years. We push messages out and hope some of them stick. It's turning that on its head, and it's pulling the consumer into the content that you're sharing, the content marketing. I like to call it magnetic content. It's producing content that attracts the consumer instead of distracting them. It's really about bringing them into your message and making them come to follow you and then want to share that with other people. Another way to think about it is to use a sports analogy. Instead of hunting for the consumer where you're trying to, target them and shoot them, it sounds terrible, right? We're fishing for consumers. Fishing is a more patient exercise, and the secret, I'm not a fisherman, but I hear the secret is to have the right bait, right? If you have the right bait, the fish will come to you. Think of your marketing programs, your content marketing as the bait that draws the consumer in. And finally, you want to be doing that with social media. We've all been to, a sophisticated cocktail party or something like that, and then you meet this guy. This guy comes across as the quintessential used car salesman, and maybe he's had a few of these. And he's trying to sell you something, and you just want to have a conversation. That is obviously not the way we want to go as marketers. I'm going to close with a quote from Stephen King, famous novelist who certainly is good at getting people's attention. He said, Don't interrupt people, don't interrupt what people are interested in. Be what people are interested in. And I hope that I have been interesting to listen to. And with that, I want to say thank you, merci. And if you would like later, you can either see me or my colleague Stephanie. We'd be delighted to have this conversation further. And if you want a copy of the presentation, you can give it to me or to Stephanie. Thank you very much. Merci.
Geoff, that was absolutely amazing. Let's go to the audience, because I know the audience has got some questions, because I was blown away by some of the data you presented. Especially, I love that mobile data and the shift.
We did that for you, Perrin.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Mad love. Questions from the audience. It can be in French or in English. He will not answer in French, but you can try.
They seem stunned. There must be a question.
Okay, so I'm going to ask a question. Is that okay? Can I ask a question? Okay. So I love this balance.
En anglais, s'il vous plaît.
En anglais, d'accord. Je vais essayer. En anglais. This balance between relevancy, this battle for relevancy, and obviously attribution, data, key component. And I call it the battle between content and context. Context being the data that powers where you're putting the ad, but content being the creative, right? It seems that in this hyper growth from PC to mobile, we've taken creative and just shrank it. We had this banner and we said, okay, we're gonna shrink it. And that's gonna be the creative unit that everyone chooses, and that's what's gonna drive user engagement. What is your feeling about the banner within this new world of mobility, within this new marketing world?
We have to get better at shrinking things. No, I'm just kidding. It's very analogous to when television came along and radio was the thing everybody listened to, and then we just simply put the radio on television and we forgot that it's a visual medium. I think we have a lot of work to do. In fact, all of the numbers, the forecasting numbers that you look at in terms of ad spending on mobile are predicated on or based on us figuring out collectively as an industry how to work within those smaller screens, whether it be a tablet, a phablet, a smartphone, a watch, your fridge. It's having an appropriately contextualized message that, again, gets back to that value. Right place, right time, right person, but then you have to have something of value that answers a question or serves a need. And until we take the time to do that, and we're going to actually have to change our budgets from spending it all on traditional, just paid media, and of course, paid media is not going away, I'm not saying that, but we have to spend more on the production of content that will be worthy of people's time and attention, whether it be on a smartphone or on a big screen TV. And you know, the Lego movie is a classic example. They spent, I forget what the actual number was, but you know, they spent a lot of money on that movie, but they recouped that back big time, not just from what they made from the movie through Warner Brothers, but also the branding that they got has served them worldwide.
That's great. Questions from the question over here.
I think we have a couple back there.
Oh, you got some back there too? Okay, so let's start over here.
Yes, hi, Virginie Lenver. I am head of global analytics for Weight Watchers International. You mentioned the consumer journey. I'm here, by the way, front row.
Oh, there you are. Sorry, I was looking back there. Yes.
You were trying to locate me.
How'd you do that?
So,
you moved?
Yeah, no, that's right. Quite good. So I just wanted to, the offline experience as part of the whole, you know, integral part of the consumer journey is one of the biggest challenges we have, certainly as a company. What we are investing in is actually trying to use and leverage mobile data to compensate a little bit our blindness
yes.
on offline, you know, offline understanding of what happens to the consumer. Can you just give examples? Do you know examples of leading edge? You know, I mean, really proof of concept in this
I always
area?
hate to bring up examples, but let me just talk to that concept and kind of amplify that because it's really important. The neat thing about the mobile phone or any kind of device that walks around with us is that it is bridging the gap between the digital world and the physical world. And there's an opportunity there, of course, to have the consumer, if you have the right content, to engage them such that they are providing some information or interacting or engaging with you at a critical point in time. And the holy grail that we're trying to reach is to follow that customer's journey right up into the point of the actual sale, whether it happens in a digital realm or it happens right there in the store. And many, many companies are learning that they're going to have to pool their data. Unfortunately, sometimes with Facebook, DataZoo, I mean, there's a lot of companies out there that we're going to have to partner to put this information together so that we can really follow that consumer wherever they are, including in the physical world. And the most exciting opportunity I see with mobile is that connection between the digital world and the physical world. If I am in Times Square, which is where our offices are, and I see a billboard and I see people going like this, they're often interacting with some kind of promotion that's up there on the screen, and sometimes they're actually sending up like a photo of themselves, or they're connecting with the digital signage that's up there. There's tons of exciting opportunities, and so many of them are going to exist in the physical world. And soon, when we have Oculus and some of these other devices, it's just going to be a transportive thing. And so I recommend that you get on board now with mobile, because where it's going, it's beyond what anybody can forecast. But it's a very exciting opportunity. Again, the digital and the physical worlds coming together. I don't know if I answered that question, but maybe I'll have some examples for you later. Back here.
Yeah, hello, Geoffrey. Eric Maribion, leading advertising for Microsoft in France. Thank you for the presentation. One question. To your opinion, what are the reasons for France to be so late in digital spending all up compared to UK, for instance?
Oh boy, that's a great question. Why is France behind in terms of digital ad spending? I would almost want to play that back to you. Look, I spoke in Brazil last year, and I had to inform them that they were way behind. I know the reasons for that, and it largely comes down to telcos and telecoms, and I mean, that may be part of the picture here. I think that there is generally, you know, I'm skating on thin ice here, but Germany is also fairly far behind, and to some extent it may be cultural, and the desire among the very big media properties to hold on to legacy businesses. And we've seen that in the US, we've seen that in the UK, but it's starting to disrupt, it's starting to diffuse. And more as younger people come up through the ranks, they are more and more desirous of and willing to break the old models and to relook at things. And it's going to get pretty exciting over the next few years, but it's also going to be a lost opportunity unless you guys start spending more, because it's not just the opportunity you get today, it's the learning you get for tomorrow. Trying to get into some of this stuff, the digital stuff, the mobile stuff, you know, later in the game after you see if it all works out, is too late. And I think that's what people are starting to, companies are starting to realize worldwide. You saw that the numbers in France are going to go up significantly. Once again, that's predicated on, you know, people getting with the program and realizing that this is a global phenomenon and that they have to do this in order to stay with the consumer and to compete.
Hi, Adrian Guerra. I'm heading the marketing for a video game company. And you were talking about the wall separating various divisions within a company not sharing data. But I'm thinking about another wall, which is between actually the advertisers, like us, the publishers, and the retailers, who are considering their data, their database, you know, a little bit like the ring in the Lord of the Ring, my precious, and even if it would be in their interest to show, to share data on, you know, the full funnel, they're not doing it. Do you have an example, or?
Yeah, I'm not sure I have an example, but you know,
profitable relationship.
I talked about partnering before. Is that there's been a symbiotic relationship between publishers, media properties, and advertisers, and then the consumer's kind of stuck in the middle. And you know, the old model was that you as an advertiser pay the publisher to get your interrupted, disruptive message in front of the consumer. That's still going to happen, but it's going to happen less and less. More and more what's going to happen is, you know, I was talking about content marketing, is that the advertiser and the publisher, who is an expert at serving up quality content to a given audience, they need to work in partnership together. We see this in the print world, companies like Hearst and Condé Nast, where the publishers are almost acting like an advertising agency in terms of helping the marketer connect with individuals, their audience, with content that's relevant and interesting. I think advertising agencies will be here forever. I worked at advertising agencies for 17 years, but there's going to be new tectonic shifts coming and new partnerships developing, and people, you know, everybody's competing with everybody because Amazon is a retailer, right? But they also have tons of data, which many marketers would kill to get. And really, if you boil all of this up in my entire presentation, it's really about the data and who gets it. And that's why I implore everybody to seek partnerships, to find win-wins, where if you share the data, everybody wins because the consumer gets a better experience, the advertiser gets to reach the people they want to reach in the right context, and the publisher, you know, gets money for their efforts as well. There's no easy answers, and I can't provide any specific examples, but I know that conceptually that is absolutely what's happening.
Question over here.
Hello, Armel Burso, head of data analytics for Starcom, Mediavest. A question to your answer, because sharing, I mean, data from publishers and marketers to create really relevant content, how do you see programmatic in that?
Sorry, I'm not sure.
How do you see programmatic in that? Because at some point it can seem a little bit the contrary.
Yeah.
What is happening?
Yes. Did somebody else say something?
Was there another question down here or something?
I don't have a direct answer for that, but that would be a great cocktail conversation.
Any other question over there? Hold on, I'm coming. Making me work today. Je viens. Attendez. Ah, merci. Voilà.
The concept of sharing, you know, we talk a lot about sharing economy. It's not so much existing into the ad tech or the media and advertising industry, but you talked about silos. It's a challenge for marketers. You explained it widely. The question is, you don't have much ad tech that are non-silos.
So say that again, we don't...
The supply of ad technology. What we're talking about is that the wider use of technology to help marketers, but most technology are silo. Most technology providers are silo. So what's your view on integrated stack for marketers? Because I think they need input on that as well, is to say, should I take just a silo technology or should I look for an integrated stack technology?
Yes.
Can you go further on that?
As I indicated, there probably will not be one universal identifier that connects it all. It will be a patchwork, brings back the partnering concept. Right now, there are way too many ad tech solutions out there, all promising that they can offer everything that you need. And I don't want to single anybody out, but there's going to be a decrease in the number of ad tech technology companies. I think we will see a lot of consolidation over the next few years. And what I said before is that some of the leading brands will figure this out. They will identify some of the most promising ad tech providers, and they will work assiduously together to combine that data right through the customer journey and right through to purchase and repeat purchase. I can't name names, but I've already mentioned DataZoo as one example, which is working with Facebook and working with a number of advertisers. We are starting to see now the emergence of ad tech companies that are big enough and robust enough and sophisticated enough to put that data together, but it will always require multiple groups working together. And it's not going to be perfect at the beginning, but it will, the picture will start to get clearer as we go along. I know that's kind of a hedge, but there are no easy answers. There's no silver bullet.
Geoff, great presentation. Thank you so much. Let's give him a big round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.